Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank my colleagues on the government side for their presentation in defending and presenting to the people of Guyana the local content bill and the benefits that will be derived from such a bill after its passage today in this National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to thank the members, the opposition who spoke, regardless of the grandstanding and the usual act of trying to gain cheap political points using the local content bill. We heard members on the opposition side spoke of glowingly and with care now of sole traders, of small businesses. This is the very opposition that was in government for 5 years from 2015 to 2020 and did nothing for the small business operators. We heard many comments about the indigenous people, but I wish to state, Mr. Speaker, that the indigenous communities and the hinterland regions would have developed the most under the People's Progressive Party civic administration. And not a single village, as was mentioned by the Honorable Ferguson. We are speaking about over 200 villages that would have experienced development under our administration. And we do consider indigenous or Amerindians as Guyanese. So when we come and we speak about benefits to Guyanese, we mean all Guyanese. We mean all Guyanese. Our Amerindian brothers and sisters, Afro-Guyanese, Indo-Guyanese, every single Guyanese will benefit from the local content bill. In the schedule, we have food supply. 75% of it will come from Guyana. It means that our farmers, indigenous farmers, their produce will go offshore and they have PSO. They will benefit from this. Today we have indigenous people who are welders, who are engineers, and who are in the professional field and not only farming only. So the bill is designed to ensure that every single Guyanese benefit regardless of ethnicity, regardless of where you live. And that is the point that we wish to make, Mr. Speaker. It is for Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure what the Honorable Member, Mr. Ramjitan, was trying to say when they negotiated for an extra % of royalty. Mr. Speaker, we are probably one of the worst production sharing agreements in the world. And the Honorable Member is here boasting about negotiating for one extra %. 1%, Mr. Speaker, when countries are enjoying 5 and 7%. The Honorable Member is boasting about a lopsided PSA with 2% royalty, and we had to negotiate. We had to negotiate. It was such a difficult task to renegotiate for 1%. So, Mr. Speaker, we should not use these opportunities to grandstand and to gain cheap political points. This is a bill that should have shown nationalism. It is a bill that should have shown patriotism. But yet people come to the National Assembly and try to gain a few cheap political points, or try to outdo yourself in the opposition because maybe you're running for General Secretary and Chairman position soon. So you try to outdo your own. Mr. Speaker, a lot has been said about consultations. And the Honorable Member waved our magazine. I would like to know if that magazine, if in the crafting of that magazine, if any consultation was done with the then opposition. That magazine, Mr. Speaker, was published in January 2020. A mere few weeks while we were preparing for election. January 2020. The government took office in 2015 when we discovered oil. And 1 month before the next election, they published this magazine. And if you read that magazine, Mr. Speaker, it speaks more about benefits to the operators and not to locals. So it is more of a foreign content policy and not much of a local content policy. Mr. Speaker, and the honorable member is waving it, and is asking what we have done. Mr. Speaker, we have a local content bill in the National Assembly right now that we will pass in a few minutes from now. That is what we have, Mr. Speaker. A bill that will go into legislation and compel, not to depend on the goodwill of oil companies or contractors, but will compel them to do business with Guyanese. That will compel them to employ Guyanese in the oil and gas sector. That is what we have. That is what we have today in front of the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, all the members on the opposition side has called for this bill to go to a special select committee. But there is a fear among us. There is a fear among us. In the last Parliament, I can recall the Petroleum Commission bill going to special select committee. I can recall the Animal Welfare bill going to a special select committee. I can remember the Food and Safety bill going to a special select committee. The Education bill going to a special select committee. And where are these bills today? Where are these bills today? Mr. Speaker, while the grass is growing, the horse is starving. And that is what you did in 5 years. In 5 years, you did nothing. You did nothing to build out the architecture to manage the oil and gas sector. You have a magazine that you're waving that was printed in January 2020. January 2020, 1 month. 1 month before the election. 1 month before the election. So, Mr. Speaker, we don't trust the opposition when it comes to sending bills to a special select committee. Mr. Speaker, the local content bill is a working document. It is a living document. Nothing is stopping the opposition from making submissions from us. We will continue the consultation after this bill is passed in the National Assembly. This is not the end of it, Mr. Speaker. After it is passed in the National Assembly, it is a continuous process of consultation because we have committed ourselves to changing the schedule from time to time based on our capacity. Based on an improvement in our capacity, we have committed ourselves to changing that schedule. So obviously, Mr. Speaker, we will have to keep consulting with every single stakeholder, every single group in the country as we move forward, because it cannot be a static document. It must change, and we are committed to that. The mere fact that we have tabled this bill, it shows that we are committed to bringing benefits to Guyanese and Guyanese businesses. That is our commitment. So it is obvious, Mr. Speaker, that we're even further committed to ensuring that we increase targets as we build capacity. We add new services to the list as we build capacity, and we have more investments in the sector by local companies and local businesses. So that is our commitment, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the question of the register, I'm not sure how is it that the honorable member could come up with the register and the master plan being more red tape or adding more bureaucracy to the process. The register will be compiled by the local content secretariat. 2 registers, one to deal with human resources, employment, and one to deal with business, goods and services. The local content secretariat is responsible for compiling that. When a business is registered, or a person is registered with the local content secretariat, they will be given a certificate, which will be renewed on an annual basis to ensure that the information are updated and people are not fronting for any foreign companies. That is why we need to ensure that there are checks and balances. The honorable member termed it as being adding more bureaucracy. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of the register, the honorable member Patterson mentioned that if a MyPaul or if a Sherrod show up to be registered. That as minister responsible for petroleum, I would look at the faces of the association and don't put them on the register. That is an acquisition. That is an acquisition. But then further in the same proposed amendment by the honorable member, he's asking the very minister to set up a review committee. The same minister is asking to set up a review committee to review the person refusal. So it is contradicting, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we cannot craft bill for people who has sinister thinking, they think negatively, people who don't trust each other. We cannot build bills for that. We cannot set bills for that. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of a Guyanese, or a Guyanese should only qualify if he's born in Guyana. Mr. Speaker, are we saying that if two Guyanese leave the shores and they go to another country and they have children, and then they decide that we are going home back because our country is developing, that Guyana is getting better now, and they come home, are we saying that their children will not be qualified to do business with the oil companies? That is what the proposal is saying. That is what the proposed amendment is saying. That you got to be born in Guyana only to do business. And it is illegal and it is wrong, Mr. Speaker. It is illegal and it is wrong. Mr. Speaker, it is no secret that the oil and gas sector will stimulate growth in the other sectors. And we have already seen that. We have already seen that. We have already seen in the tourism sector. Right now it is difficult to get a hotel room in Georgetown because our tourism sector is booming. If you look at our agriculture sector and our Minister of Agriculture, agriculture has been doing better. So every single sector, Mr. Speaker, will enjoy growth because of the oil and gas sector, because our oil and gas will stimulate the growth in the other sectors. And Mr. Speaker, we want to ensure that with this bill, Guyanese benefit from that growth. We want to ensure that as those sectors grow, Guyanese grow with it too. We know that the bill is a working document. We know that targets will have to be adjusted. That is why we will continue consulting. We will continue consulting. And by a simple order, we will change that. We will change it based on capacity. But we can only know our capacity once we put it out. We can only know our capacity once we do a true assessment. There was no assessment done before, but this bill will help us. This bill will help us to truly assess our capacity in our businesses, and also what capacity building we have to do in terms of our human resources. That is what we will also achieve through this bill, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that as a government, we are committed to working with every single stakeholder, even if it is the opposition, once they're serious in developing the oil and gas sector. Once they're serious in the development of the oil and gas sector, we are willing to work with them. And there was nothing stopping the opposition from making a submission to the government. We had over 1 year of consultations. We had over 1 year that there was the opportunity for the opposition to make a submission to us. What is wrong with that? If you're serious about the development of our people, if you're serious about the development of our people and our country, what is stopping you? You were elected by the people. So why didn't you make a submission? But you choose to come here today and cry about it. So that you can gain some cheap political points. Is that how you're representing your constituency? Is coming here and grandstanding more important than representing your constituency? Mr. Speaker, we got to be serious. We have to be serious about the development of our country and our people. And as a government, we are committed to that. We are committed to moving the sector forward in a transparent and accountable manner, and in a manner that every single Guyanese will benefit from the sector. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank you. I wish to thank you, and I ask that the local content bill, Bill number 21 of 2021, be passed in the National Assembly with the amendments that was proposed by the government, and I ask that the bill be read for a third time. Thank you.